In a peaceful countryside, a couple enjoys a barbecue with drinks. As the meat finishes cooking, they both reach for the tongs, their hands brushing and faces flushing with embarrassment. The boy quickly pulls away, apologizing, but she smiles and reassures him. To break the awkwardness, he offers her a piece of grilled meat, which she gratefully accepts with a soft thanks. Fukuyama, a 30-year-old engineer, recalls his first meeting with her. 3 months ago, he sat in a fancy restaurant, sorrowfully staring at his phone, reading a message from his date apologizing for being late. Longing for marriage but struggling to meet people, he had turned to a dating app, as suggested by a friend. This blind date felt like his last chance, but his thoughts were interrupted when a waiter asked if he wanted tea for his partner. Disappointed, Fukuyama asked for the check, leaving the untouched food behind. It was the 3rd time he'd stood up, and as he left, he sadly realized that even with apps, meeting someone felt impossible. As Fukuyama left in disappointment, he was stunned when a beautiful woman called his name. With an expressionless face, she introduced herself as Yamaguchi and apologized for being late, explaining that she had rushed over because he hadn't responded. Shocked to see him already leaving, Fukuyama, confused, quickly suggested they go somewhere else, admitting he had thought he'd been stood up. They arrived at a yakiniku place where Yamaguchi, with a calm expression, admitted it was her first time there with someone she had never met before. Embarrassed, Fukuyama agreed, silently regretting his choice, as it was a place he usually visited with his guy friends. He reassured himself, thinking the food was at least great. Looking at Yamaguchi, he worried she didn't like the place. However, she soon apologized again for her lateness, which had led him to change venues. Smiling nervously, Fukuyama also apologized for not replying, assuming she had stood him up. Hoping to ease the tension, he asked if she was a designer working with magazines and advertisements. She nodded, adding that she had recently worked on designs for the Grand Bazaar at Parco. As Fukuyama listened, he became even more self-conscious, realizing she designed for the renowned Grand Bazaar, a place he admired. Feeling uneasy, he wondered if she was accustomed to dining in pristine, upscale restaurants and might not enjoy this casual spot. As they waited for the meat to grill, he noticed it was ready. Just as she was about to grab it with her chopsticks, he quickly stopped her. With a warm smile, he took the tongs and suggested letting it cook a bit longer for better flavor, reminding her to use the tongs to avoid any chance of food poisoning. She simply looked at him, and he misread her gaze as distant, immediately fearing he'd ruined the moment. He was further baffled when she suddenly asked if he enjoyed yakiniku. Enthusiastically, he confessed his love for it, especially watching the flames dance. Realizing he was rambling, he apologized, assuming she wasn't interested, but she quickly reassured him otherwise. With a hopeful glance, he asked what made her decide to come, and she softly replied that she had promised to meet him. As he looked at the grilling meat, he admitted she was the first person from the app who had actually shown up to meet him in person. He revealed how others had always either ghosted him midway or failed to keep their promises, even after agreeing to meet. Looking at her, he confessed to feeling awkward, as if today was a repeat of past mistakes, choosing a swanky spot to impress, only to settle on a cozy place where he felt genuinely comfortable. He admitted he should have been authentic from the beginning, but his fear of rejection had led him to mask his true self. He realized that a relationship based on pretense was doomed. She didn't react to his candidness, instead inquiring if the meat was cooked to perfection. Nodding in agreement, Fukuyama watched as she picked up a piece with her chopsticks and tasted it. Still perplexed, he asked if she enjoyed it. With a charming smile, she complimented his clear enthusiasm for barbecue, noting he had nailed the cooking. Fukuyama, stunned and blushing, found it hard to believe. They exchanged contact details and began to meet occasionally for delightful meals together. At the office, Fukuyama shyly mentioned Yamaguchi to his friend. When asked about their progress, he admitted they were just dating. His friend teased him, joking that even middle schoolers would have gotten further. Their conversation was cut short when an office boy called Fukuyama to the boss's office, where he received a transfer to Hamamatsu. Excited, his boss explained the opening on the advanced development team, and since Fukuyama had shown interest, he was sent there. At home, lying on his bed, he didn't mind the transfer but felt saddened about not seeing Yamaguchi again, wishing he'd gotten to know her better. He felt helpless and feared she'd easily move on. Depressed, he cheered himself up by thinking of Sawayama's Hamburg steaks and grilled bean sprouts. Hungry, he decided to grab a beer from the convenience store, but just as he was leaving, a message from Yamaguchi popped up. Unsure of how to respond, he left it unanswered. As Fukuyama opened the door to head to the convenience store, he froze in embarrassment, shouting in surprise as he saw Yamaguchi standing at his doorstep with a cold expression. When he asked why she was there, she, with a sorrowful look, explained that she became worried when he suddenly stopped replying. He quickly apologized, inviting her inside and offering her coffee. As they sat, he shared the news of his transfer, explaining why he had ignored her. She understood, and with a bittersweet smile, he told her this was likely their last meeting, urging her to take care of herself, even though he wished they could have gotten to know each other better. But he was stunned when she unexpectedly suggested they get married. Shocked, he asked if she was serious, to which she sadly confirmed. She didn't want their story to end here. When he asked why, she reminded him of his fear of rejection for being his true self during their first meeting. She confessed that she felt the same way, as people often called her cold and distant. It was easier for her to live that way, where no one could be disappointed. She reminded him of their first meeting, confessing that she had been late because of panic. With a soft smile, she admitted that now, standing before him, she no longer needed to pretend. She could truly be herself with him. Fukuyama, still disheartened, mentioned the distance between them and asked about her career after marriage. She confidently assured him that she would make it work, acknowledging they might only see each other occasionally for some time. But with a radiant smile, she added that it didn't matter because they had a lifetime together. And so they decided to marry. A week into their marriage, as he picked her up, he blushed at the thought of her being his wife. She thanked him for coming, and sitting next to her in the car, he couldn't help but admire her charm. Having her beside him filled him with such joy that he felt like showing her off to the entire world. As they drove, she expressed that despite their long-distance arrangement, she was still happy, and he wholeheartedly agreed. When she apologized for making him find their new home alone, he reassured her with a smile, saying it was no trouble at all. His excitement made everything effortless. As they arrived at the grand house, she stood in awe. With a smirk, he reassured her that it was just a rental. Out in the spacious backyard, he shared his long-time dream of hosting barbecues at his own place once he got married. Now as they savor the meal, she praises the perfectly grilled meat. He, with excitement, reveals that he marinated it overnight. When she wonders if it was a lot of effort, he casually explains it wasn't, just poking holes with a fork, seasoning with salt and pepper, tossing it into a bag with shredded onions and marinade, and letting it sit in the fridge. With bright enthusiasm, he adds that grilling it was a breeze, and the flavor is absolutely mouth-watering. When she asks in shock if he has any outdoor experience or goes camping, he sheepishly admits he hasn't gone that far. But with a spark of excitement, he shares that he prefers the taste of charcoal-grilled meat and swears beer tastes better outside. Gazing at the barbecue flames with a serene look, he confesses that being around an open flame is what really soothes him. He enjoys that vibe more than typical outdoor activities. Offering her a drink, she smiles and agrees, saying that drinking outside truly enhances the flavor. He chuckles and nods in agreement. As they relax, enjoying their drinks and the barbecue, Fukuyama beams with excitement, telling her how his dream came true faster than he imagined. Recalling her last barbecue at her welcome party, she admits she felt drained back then, trying to impress people she didn't even know. But he's stunned when she reveals she doesn't have much of an opinion on barbecues until she looks at him and shyly confesses that it's fun when she's with someone she loves. Overjoyed by her confession, Fukuyama's heart swells with happiness. The newlyweds are enjoying their first weekend at their new home, which he gazes at the stars, admiring their beauty. After a few moments, he casually asks if she wants to take a bath before bed, but becomes concerned when she anxiously checks her phone and informs him she needs to catch the bullet train. He had assumed they'd spend the night together. She glances at him, then quickly apologizes, realizing she hadn't told him about her early morning meeting. With a reassuring smile, he calms her down, showing that he understands. He drives her to Hamamatsu Station, where they chat about getting a large refrigerator, to which she agrees. Sitting on the bench while waiting for her train, she holds his hand and sweetly tells him she's ready to spend the night with him next weekend. As the bullet train arrives, he waves her goodbye, marking the start of their weekend marriage. On his way back home, he ponders asking her next week about her dislikes, deciding he wants to gradually learn about each other and grow into true husband and wife. Once home, he excitedly thinks about what to grill for her next time, already eager for the weekend that feels too far away. Within just a few days of their wedding, news of their marriage spreads like wildfire at Yamaguchi's workplace. Colleagues buzz with gossip about their long-distance relationship, expressing shock and curiosity over the man who married her, known for being a cool beauty. They also chatter about her hectic schedule, even as a newlywed. Despite all the talk, Yamaguchi remains unfazed, her mind focused on her upcoming visit to Hamamatsu tomorrow, which fills her with excitement. The next day, Fukuyama is buzzing with excitement, eagerly anticipating his long-awaited reunion with Chihiro-san. While video chatting with a colleague, he multitasks by cleaning the room. Amidst their conversation, he mentions how swamped he's been with work and that he'll have to wrap up the call soon. Before he can, his colleague teases him, saying he's the only one thrilled because he managed to marry a stunning woman who works at a big company. Fukuyama's face instantly turns red with frustration as he yells at his phone, demanding an explanation. Laughing, his friend quickly assures him he was just joking, suggesting they enjoy some alone time together. But before his colleague can finish the sentence, Fukuyama cuts the call, clearly annoyed. When Yamaguchi arrives home, Fukuyama, wearing an apron in the kitchen, asks if she needs any help with cooking. Holding a knife, she gently declines, reminding him that he took care of everything last week, so this time it's her turn to prepare dinner. Blushing deeply, he's both impressed and touched by the fact that his wife is skilled in home cooking. He can't help but admire her even more, especially how beautiful she looks, even in an apron. When he asks about her day, Yamaguchi, with a serious expression, mentions that she worked overtime again yesterday, and he understands how tough it is for her. After finishing the meal prep, she tells him to let the food simmer. He lights up with excitement, realizing she's made soup curry. As they begin eating, his first bite reveals the curry is too watery. Before he can comment, Yamaguchi herself confesses with a regretful look that the curry turned out too thin. Perplexed, he asks if she followed the recipe correctly, mentioning the full recipe. After dinner, as they wash the dishes, he notices her disheartened expression and gently reassures her not to stress over the thin curry. He reminds her that it turned out delicious after they added more roux, and with a heartfelt smile, he promises he'll eagerly enjoy the leftovers later. With a beaming smile and delight, he gushes about how lucky he is to have enjoyed his wife's homemade curry every day this week. She apologizes for not being able to be with him every single day. Just then, the bathroom light signals the bath is ready, and with a charming grin, he suggests she take a bath. Afterward, he excitedly proposes they share some ice cream together. After Yamaguchi finishes her bath, Fukuyama eagerly takes his turn. When he emerges, he freezes, noticing that Yamaguchi has fallen asleep on the sofa. Understanding how drained she must be from her demanding work schedule, he carefully drapes a blanket over her. With a gentle smile, he gazes at her serene face, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Despite her hectic routine, she still makes the effort to be with him, and this realization fills him with warmth. The next morning, Yamaguchi wakes up in a state of surprise. Finding herself in bed at 11 a.m., she dashes out, frantically searching for her husband. Fukuyama, noticing her flustered state, warmly greets her with a good morning. Realizing she's still in her pajamas and without makeup, she hurriedly tries to hide behind the wall. With a reassuring smile, Fukuyama tells her that makeup is inconsequential and invites her to breakfast, where he's preparing delectable pancakes. With unwavering determination, she approaches him as he demonstrates the art of pancake making. He instructs her to blend cake flour with baking powder, then incorporate milk and eggs into the mix. When the skillet heats up, he cools it with a damp cloth. However, she gasps loudly when she notices the batter starting to burn. Smiling, he reassures her that the hot pan is essential for perfecting the batter. Once the sizzling subsides, he spreads butter on the pan and reheats it, then pours in the batter to cook over a gentle flame. The pancakes are ready when bubbles appear on the surface. She watches with immense enthusiasm and eagerly joins him in the cooking process. At last, the bacon and egg pancakes are ready. Both of them beam with delight as they savor the incredibly delicious, fluffy, gooey, and crispy pancakes. As she takes a bite, she praises his pancake-making skills, particularly admiring the perfectly runny eggs. He explains that he cooks them on low heat, ensuring the egg whites are set just right for a delectable meal. The skillet's excellent heat conduction results in beautifully puffy pancakes. She also compliments the crispy bacon. Noticing the other pancakes, she asks for a few minutes to prepare another egg, and with a touch of sadness, she discovers the ice cream in the fridge that they forgot to enjoy yesterday. With infectious enthusiasm, he reassures her that he knows the ultimate way to enjoy this ice cream. He adds a sprinkle of rainbow pepper on top, creating a vibrant and tantalizing treat. As she marvels at the delightful ice cream, captivated by its alluring aroma and its surprisingly satisfying flavor, he shares his astonishment at how well black pepper complements vanilla ice cream. He expresses his own confusion about never having tried rainbow pepper before and wonders if this spice is particularly mild. With a bright smile, he explains that this seasoning is a barbecue essential, adding rich depth to any dish. The blend includes 4 types of peppercorns: bold black pepper to eliminate bitterness, mild white pepper to balance flavors, vibrant green pepper for a fresh kick, and fruity pink pepper, technically from a different tree. She admires its vibrant colors and unique accents, finding it utterly charming. With a grin, he adds that it's freshly ground, and the enticing aroma makes everyone eager to turn the pepper mill. Enthusiastically, he dives into the world of spices, revealing his plans to explore the endless possibilities of spice blending. After breakfast, as they clean up the dishes, she apologizes with a touch of sadness for the previous night. When he inquires if her thin curry was due to lack of sleep, she explains that she was up late, not because of overtime, but because she was so excited to see him that she couldn't sleep properly. Understanding her situation, he reassures her that it's perfectly okay, and they share a moment of warmth and understanding. She then apologizes once more, scolding herself for not being a child anymore and admitting her lack of cooking skills. Despite her self-reproach, he is overjoyed to learn that her excitement to see him was the reason for her sleeplessness. His happiness overwhelms him, and tears of joy well up in his eyes. He reassures her that he wasn't the only one thrilled, recalling how his friends had teased him about it. Now, as they sit side by side, their faces flushed with smiles, they share a tender, joyful moment. As they unwind in their chairs, he shares that while he usually enjoys vanilla ice cream, he pairs it with strawberry-flavored shaved ice. Curious about her preferences, he becomes bashful and his cheeks flush crimson when she rests her head on his shoulder. In response, he gently rests his head against hers, feeling a drowsy comfort. Their weekend has just begun, and they both bask in the joy of their shared happiness. As the following weekend, when she arrives, she is astounded to find the fridge stocked to the brim with various beers. In response to her surprise, he beams and reveals that their friend Toda-san had gifted them this impressive selection as a wedding present. Bursting with enthusiasm, he then proposes a shopping trip to pick out some meat to complement the beer. After arriving at the convenience store, and while shopping, he reflects on his goals for the day and recalls a recent call with Toda-san, where he expressed gratitude for the beer gift. However, he was baffled when Toda-san inquired about the progress in their relationship, leaving him confused about the underlying meaning. His face flushed red when Toda-san playfully teased him about not advancing their wedding relationship beyond hand-holding and suggested they unwind with a few beers to ease the tension. With great enthusiasm, he agreed to the idea. As he glances at her, he reminisces about his conversation with his friend. Noticing her curiosity, she asks, slightly embarrassed, if there's something on her face. He swiftly shifts the topic to choosing meat for their meal. He proposes either picking ginger pork to complement the beer or opting for a more straightforward choice like grilling some beef. While discussing, he attempts to hold her hand, as suggested by his friend, but stumbles when she excitedly points out her preference for lamb chops. With a chuckle, he concurs with her choice and suggests adding some cumin to their shopping cart. He explains that cumin, commonly used in ethnic cuisine, has a delightful aroma and is essential in pickles, meatloaf, and Indian curry. He shares his fondness for it, but notices her puzzled look. Curious, he asks if she doesn't enjoy curry. She quickly clarifies that it's not that she dislikes it, but rather she hadn't paid much attention to it. Smiling, she reveals that she actually enjoys both Indian curry and meatloaf and praises his excellent cooking skills, which makes him blush with happiness. Summoning his courage, he attempts to hold her hand again, but his efforts fall short as she playfully directs his attention to the cumin. After their shopping spree, they return home, where he eagerly preps the backyard for their feast. He lets the lamb chops come to room temperature, then seasons them with a sprinkle of cumin, rosemary, and salt before igniting the grill. As he works, she watches him with intense focus. He explains that managing the intensity of a charcoal flame is trickier than using gas, but it's advantageous because it allows him to create distinct high and medium heat zones, with a low heat zone reserved just for keeping the food warm. Since they're cooking at home, he opts for a gentle touch with the meat. He skillfully adjusts the heat by varying the distance between the charcoal and the grate. She points out that the grate's height is adjustable, which he confirms with a nod. He starts by searing the meat on high heat until it's delightfully crispy on both sides. Then, to ensure the heat reaches the center, he lowers the heat and cooks it slowly, allowing the flavors to develop perfectly. As they gather around the table for their meal, he feels a flutter of nerves, unsure of what to say. But his anxiety quickly dissipates when Yamaguchi suggests they enjoy a beer together. With a relieved smile, they clink their glasses and take a sip, their faces flushed with happiness and contentment. With a contented grin, she feels the week's stress dissolve, which prompts him to ask if she's been buried under work. She then inquires about his new job, and he shares that he's acclimating well. The team has been incredibly welcoming, even inviting him for a fishing trip, as the local lake is famed for its octopus catches. Seeing her excitement, he suggests she joins him on their next adventure if this one turns out to be enjoyable with his colleagues. His thrill is palpable as he notices their easy, relaxed conversation. She, however, refocuses the moment on the succulent grilled lamb chops, reminding him that it's time to savor their delicious feast. With the first delectable bite, both are delighted by the mouth-watering and exquisite flavor. The meat is perfectly tender, the fat has just the right bite, and it pairs seamlessly with the beer. As he savors his drink, he expresses his gratitude to his friend Toda, recounting how they began working together around the same time. He describes Toda-san as a bit of a maverick, but despite their differences, they've formed a solid friendship. He enjoys his company, though he's aware that Toda's words often lack substance. As he muses about what he might grill if Toda joined them, she shifts the topic with a bright smile, noting how exciting their future looks. A bit puzzled, he recalls her words that they have a lifetime together. Watching her calm expression, he resolves to enjoy their journey at their own pace, cherishing every moment. His face turns red as she gently places his hand on her cheek, commenting on how cool and soothing it feels. A few days later, as Fukuyama joins his colleagues for a fishing trip, he is awestruck when Suzuki-san, a fellow angler, reels in an enormous fish and stores it in an icebox. Fukuyama, also managing to catch a fish, is deeply moved by the thought of sharing this catch with Chihiro-san. Lost in thoughts of her, he is jolted back to reality when his colleagues inform him that it's time to pack up. As they settle in for a fish grilling session, one of his juniors, curious about his long-distance relationship, inquires about how they meet. He shares that Yamaguchi has been visiting him every week. His colleagues are astonished. The sheer difficulty of her frequent visits is evident to everyone, and Fukuyama concurs. He reveals that when he offered to visit her in Tokyo instead, Yamaguchi assured him it was fine. However, his juniors suggest, with a knowing glance, that her response was likely just to ease his concerns. Fukuyama is taken aback when asked if they ever ventured out together. The revelation that their only outing has been backyard barbecues leaves everyone equally astonished. Enthusiastic suggestions for a proper date prompt Fukuyama to excitedly call her. Initially perplexed, she eventually agrees, her confusion giving way to anticipation as he shares the news of their upcoming first date. The next day, as Fukuyama picks her up, she inquires about their immediate plans for the date. He reminds her that this outing is a new experience for them, spurred by his colleagues' suggestions. Yamaguchi, feeling a bit nervous about their first official date, smiles at him with a touch of excitement. Dressed beautifully for the occasion, she catches his eye, and he can't help but find her irresistibly adorable. As they stroll through Hamamatsu Castle, they explore its various historical sites, exchanging their thoughts and impressions along the way. They make their way up to the second floor, where they take a break, savoring some coffee and reflecting on their day's adventure. As they rest, they both realize just how much ground they covered, enjoying the rich history and each other's company. As they chat, Fukuyama, holding a paper with a grin, enthusiastically reveals his meticulously planned itinerary for the day. He's pleasantly surprised to see her reaction to his detailed schedule. With a cheerful smile, she encourages him to stick to the plan and visit all the attractions promptly as time is slipping away. They then embark on a delightful journey through various shops, indulge in some window shopping, and revel in the winter wonderland, savoring every moment of their adventure. As they drive home, Fukuyama asks her about her experience, curious if she feels it was a proper date. Initially, she responds with a nonchalant expression, admitting she's not entirely familiar with the concept of a date. But then, with a warm smile, she adds that she had an immensely enjoyable day. When her stomach audibly grumbles from hunger, she quickly apologizes with a blush of embarrassment. Chuckling, he reassures her that he's planned a delightful dinner out. Her surprise grows when she asks if he's not grilling tonight, to which he responds with a grin that he's saving the grilling for another time since he plans to rise early the next morning. As they near the convenience store, Fukuyama's excitement grows when he sees the fresh, affordable seafood on display. When she asks about the store, he explains that it offers seafood from Lake Hamana and vegetables from local farmers, all at great prices. He calls it a hidden gem for quality ingredients, making it his go-to spot for fresh produce and seafood. After making their purchases and packing the items into iced boxes, Fukuyama, brimming with enthusiasm, reveals that they'll be grilling the seafood. When he mentions that they'll be grilling outside today, she's intrigued and a bit puzzled. However, their excitement peaks when they arrive at Lake Hamana, their destination. The prospect of grilling by the lake adds an extra layer of joy to their adventure. As she gazes at the bustling activity near Lake Hamana, her excitement shines through at discovering such a unique spot. With a grin, Fukuyama explains that this area is perfect for both barbecues and camping. Surprised by the number of people utilizing their barbecue equipment, she asks if everyone here is grilling. He explains that the large outdoor area is perfect for hosting people who love the outdoors, reminding him of family barbecues that always brought everyone together. When she mentions that living in a Tokyo apartment has kept her from enjoying barbecues, Fukuyama's eyes light up with excitement. When she confirms that his family is from Nasu, he eagerly suggests hosting a big barbecue there one day. Her face lights up as she agrees, expressing her own excitement to visit and reconnect with the beautiful countryside. As she glances at the box, seated beside him, she curiously asks about their meal for the day. With a grin, he eagerly shares that they're about to indulge in a delectable agillo made from octopus. Her eyes widen in surprise as she queries if it's fresh. He enthusiastically nods, revealing that it was caught by his colleague. With a determined smile, he promises that next time, he'll personally catch the octopus himself. They begin crafting a delectable agillo using a blend of pre-packaged seasonings. With deft precision, he stirs the seasoning into rich olive oil using chopsticks. He then adds an array of seafood, octopus, shrimp, along with zucchini, mushrooms, and cherry tomatoes. When she expresses astonishment at the abundance of ingredients, he grins and agrees, revealing his desire for a grand serving of agillo, rather than the modest portions found in restaurants. With a shared smile, she concurs. After a few minutes of cooking, they unveil a sumptuous platter of Hamamatsu agillo. She relishes each bite with sheer delight, savoring the extraordinary flavors of the seafood and the perfectly tender vegetables. They savor the rich flavors of their agillo, especially the octopus, which elevates the dish. She sighs, regretting that she forgot to bring French bread, but he excitedly reveals that he bought pasta instead. He cooks it and mixes it into the agillo, creating a flavorful olive oil pasta that adds an extra layer of deliciousness to their meal. As they eat, he remarks on the variety of ingredients used and how cooking the pasta this way simplifies cleanup while enhancing the flavor. His enthusiasm for creative barbecue hacks grows. After finishing their meal, she expresses her love for the outdoor barbecue experience, saying it surpasses even her favorite home barbecues. She's excited about visiting the market again, and he beams with happiness, knowing she's enjoyed the weekend as much as he has. But he's utterly stunned when she casually reveals that she was born and raised in Tokyo. She's mesmerized by the local supermarkets and rest stops, finding them utterly fascinating because she's never encountered such stores before. Growing up, she only visited one type of place, so this is all new to her. She also raves about the exhilarating experiences at the castle and the beach. Her excitement about visiting him on the weekend is palpable. She's thrilled by the unique offerings and fresh air that she can't find in Tokyo. As he gazes at her, he inquires if coming to this place has been challenging for her. She reassures him that she's perfectly fine, but he remains puzzled, unsure if she's genuinely okay or merely putting on a brave face. Both of them are taken aback when his junior colleague, Mifune-kun, unexpectedly waves at them and, with a curious glance, asks if she is his date, recalling their conversation from earlier. With a warm smile, he swiftly introduces Chihiro-san to Mifune-kun, proudly announcing her as his wife. Yamaguchi, equally beaming, expresses her gratitude for Mifune-kun's care of her husband. Both flush with embarrassment, unsure of how to respond when Mifune-kun inquires if they are newlyweds. Mifune-kun cheerfully waves goodbye, promising to see them again. As they imagine themselves as a married couple, both are filled with joy. Captivated by their happiness, he resolves to make every visit an occasion for a new date, looking forward to their weekly adventures together. That day, Fukuyama sits alone in the backyard, his mood subdued as he tends to the grill. He reflects sadly on a recent phone call with Chihiro-san, where she informed him she wouldn't be able to visit this week. Concerned, he asked if it was due to work, but she merely mentioned she had some matters to attend to. When he offered to visit her, she gently declined, suggesting instead that she could cook dinner. Despite his heartfelt admission that he couldn't bear to spend time apart, she apologized sincerely, assuring him that she would visit the following week. As Fukuyama grapples with confusion, he wonders if her message means she's asking him to stay away permanently, or if something unfortunate has happened to her. Torn between his anxiety and his desire to reach out, he's left uncertain whether to press the issue. Just as he's about to make up his mind, the call ends abruptly with her brief explanation that she had to go, leaving him even more troubled and perplexed. Staring at his phone, Fukuyama briefly worries that Yamaguchi might be seeing someone else, but quickly reassures himself that she likely just has male colleagues, which is perfectly normal. Torn between his concern for her and trying to stay positive, he attempts to calm his anxious thoughts. In the end, he finds some comfort in believing her busy schedule is the real reason for his unease. As Fukuyama tries to calm himself, he reflects on his role as her husband, reminding himself to start calling her by her first name. But a wave of unease washes over him, imagining her friends or colleagues doing the same, leaving him restless and distressed. Lying in bed, he scolds himself for not knowing more about her hobbies, social life, childhood, favorite movies, or songs. Though he tries to reassure himself that there's no need to rush into learning everything, an unsettling feeling lingers, making him worry something could be wrong. His anxiety deepens as he recalls the unusually delayed responses to his texts, sparking fears that she might regret their marriage. Still, he forces a smile, reminding himself to trust her, but the uncertainty gnaws at him. He considers calling her to ease his mind, but hesitates, unsure how to broach his concerns without appearing insecure. Overwhelmed by thoughts of her, Fukuyama feels his anxiety spiraling into depression. To distract himself, he decides to prepare some meat, hoping the act of cooking will provide a much-needed sense of comfort. To soothe his troubled mind, he begins by removing the meat from the refrigerator and letting it defrost for 30 minutes, bringing it to room temperature. Opting for simplicity, he decides to use basic briquettes as his heat source. Once the charcoal is fully ignited and the smoke dissipates, he heats the grill plate and carefully places the meat on it, ready to sizzle and cook. Today, he slices the meat into 2-centimeter thick steaks and grills each side for precisely 1 minute and 30 seconds. He refrains from wrapping it in foil, cooking it simply because he feels down without her. As the rare ribeye steak comes off the grill, he takes his first bite and is instantly revitalized and elated by the rich, savory flavor that energizes his entire being. Settling into his chair with a small stove in front of him, he revels in the satisfaction of this meal. The steak's balance of lean meat and just the right amount of fat perfectly suits his palate, avoiding the upset his stomach might experience from overly fatty cuts. As he reflects on his past, he remembers a time when solitude was his norm, and he hardly gave it a second thought. However, everything shifted when he married Yamaguchi. Now sharing a delectable meal with the person he cherishes most, someone as extraordinary as her, brings him unparalleled joy. Immersed in thoughts of her, he is driven by a deep desire to ensure her happiness forever. With unwavering resolve, he decides to visit her in Tokyo, fully committed to this heartfelt mission. As he embarks on his journey to meet her, he takes the bullet train, eagerly awaiting the announcement of Tokyo as his next stop. Although his visit was impulsive, he chides himself for potentially appearing like a stalker and feels a pang of embarrassment, especially since she had previously mentioned being busy. Upon reaching Tokyo Station, he has no choice but to text her, informing her of his arrival and inquiring if she has any time to meet. Her immediate response, tinged with concern, questions if everything is all right, and reveals that she's nearly finished with her work. She also asks if he has time to see her. As he contemplates whether to send another message, he looks up and is pleasantly surprised to see Chihiro-san approaching him with an expression of genuine astonishment. With a warm smile, a distinguished gentleman also approaches and inquires if he is indeed the infamous Kenta-kun that Chihiro-chan has spoken so highly of. Fukuyama is momentarily taken aback, but she then introduces this gentleman, Usama-san, as her former boss, explaining that she is seeking some advice from him, which makes Fukuyama concerned. Before they can delve further into their conversation, Usami suggests they continue their discussion over dinner and promptly call a taxi. Upon noticing that they are dining on a rooftop, Fukuyama inquires about the choice of location. Usami cheerfully explains that the rooftop BBQ was selected specifically because Fukuyama enjoys such settings. She apologizes to Fukuyama, clarifying that while Usami is an excellent person, he can sometimes come across as a bit intense. He reassures her with a smile, stating that this rooftop spot is actually quite ideal for him. Upon noticing, Usami inquires whether Fukuyama brought his own meat as he pulls raw meat out of his bag. When asked if he always carries meat with him, he sorrowfully shakes his head and explains that he brought this meat specifically to offer Chihiro-san something special to enjoy when they met, so he decided to carry it with him. She gazes at him with wide-eyed surprise as they prepare the meat for the barbecue and start their conversation. Yuzami, with a smile, compliments Fukuyama as a charmingly quirky individual and confides that he had sensed something was amiss when Yamaguchi abruptly allowed him to start chatting with her. Fukuyama's concern deepens when Yamaguchi admits she hadn't wanted to burden him until her plans were more certain. She reveals she's considering quitting her job to freelance for Yusami-san's office, allowing her to work from home and avoid the weekly commute to Hamamatsu. She explains that freelancing aligns perfectly with her goals and feels like the ideal next step. With a knowing smile, Yusami whispers to Fukuyama that Yamaguchi's indirect hints suggest she wants to spend more time with him. Blushing, he realizes this might be why she hadn't been able to visit. Suddenly, they detect a faint burning smell and turn their attention to the grill, where the meat is slightly charred. With renewed excitement, Fukuyama enthusiastically announces that their jerk chicken is ready. As they gaze at the meat, their excitement grows. When she takes a bite with her fork, she marvels at its deliciousness. The outer char is perfectly crispy, while the inside remains tender and juicy. When Yusami asks about Fukuyama's seasoning method, he explains with enthusiasm the spices he added. He then combined these into a marinade, mixed it with the chicken in a plastic bag, massaged it in, and let it marinate in the refrigerator for half a day. Yusami, with a knowing smile and a hint of admiration, suggests that this sumptuous concoction deserves a pairing of rum and coke. He finds the flavors so delightfully exquisite that he devours the meal with great relish. Fukuyama, impressed by Yusami's insightful comments on his seasoning prowess, acknowledges his expertise with gratitude. Meanwhile, Yusami watches the exchange with an appreciative smile as Fukuyama generously offers to grill the next batch of tempting meat. As he steps aside to continue grilling, Yusami smiles warmly at Chihiro-chan and shares that he was initially worried when she first mentioned her marriage. But now seeing Fukuyama, he feels greatly relieved as he clearly seems perfect for her. Yamaguchi, blushing and smiling, agrees wholeheartedly. Yusami playfully teases her, saying that while Fukuyama may be a bit unconventional, her own uniqueness complements him perfectly. After their meal, Yusami bids them farewell with a joyful apology for any minor issues and expresses his happiness about their lovely evening. As they leave the station and walk down the street, Fukuyama apologizes for showing up unannounced. She reassures him with a warm smile, saying she's happy to see him. Despite this, Fukuyama admits he was worried she might be regretting their marriage because of her distant behavior. She looks puzzled and apologizes, explaining that it wasn't his fault. She should have communicated her career plans more clearly. Noticing his lingering sadness over the unannounced visit, she suddenly surprises him with a tender kiss. Blushing, she promises to be more open and candid with her feelings. With a gentle smile and his hand cupping his cheek, he agrees, acknowledging that, after all, they are now husband and wife. A week later, Fukuyama eagerly anticipates Chihiro-san's arrival, feeling elated as he reminisces about the day she kissed him, which made his world sparkle and his life feel extraordinarily fulfilling. When she finally appears, she jolts him from his daydream with a casual apology for being late. Fukuyama, astonished, reassures her that she's not late at all. However, her bewildered demeanor, her averted gaze, and her decision to walk away without further explanation leave him thoroughly confused. He trails behind her, and the scene starkly mirrors their initial meeting, when both had been silent and distant. As he gazes at her, Fukuyama gently asks if she's feeling all right, only to notice her shyly avoiding eye contact. Her glance flickers toward him for just a moment, her face tinged with a deep blush, before she quickly reassures him in a soft voice that she's perfectly fine. When she asks if they're going shopping for dinner tonight, he observes that the redness has faded from her cheeks. With a warm, knowing smile, he suggests they make gyoza for dinner, confessing that he's been craving it for days. He explains that although he had already gathered all the necessary ingredients, he simply hadn't found the right moment to make it. Curious, she asks if he'd been particularly busy this week. He quickly denies it, laughing as he admits that while he was alone the previous week, his thoughts kept returning to their shared moment, so sweet and comforting that he hadn't felt the need to cook at all. Her cheeks flush again at his confession, and as she fidgets nervously, he smiles, realizing her distant behavior is just a playful attempt to hide her lingering embarrassment over that unexpected kiss. He finds her utterly endearing, filled with a surge of pride that makes him want to shout to the world how adorable his wife is. Overcome with admiration and eager to ease her discomfort, he decides to focus his energy on preparing the meal. He begins cooking with great enthusiasm, first mincing some cabbage and shiso before adding a blend of seasonings. They mix the ingredients until perfectly combined and then start wrapping the mixture. She offers her assistance with wrapping, and while she is diligently folding the wrappers, he confesses his struggles with achieving the desired shape. Despite his frustration, he is astounded and thrilled when he sees her wrapping skills, noting that they are as flawless as those from a store. With a beaming smile, she thanks him, and he eagerly encourages her to take over and wrap the remaining dumplings. As they continue wrapping, he notices that she is still avoiding eye contact. With a gentle smile, he remarks that although they are using store-bought wrappers today, they should try making their own next time. He explains that to create handmade wrappers, the dough needs to be kneaded until it's as firm as her earlobes, a detail he finds tricky since he's never quite understood the comparison to earlobes. He then gently probes if her nervousness stems from last week's events. Before he can finish, her face turns a deep crimson, and she apologizes, admitting that her recent actions have left her feeling self-conscious every time she looks into his eyes. She assures him, with a chilly demeanor, that she's all right now. However, he notices her hands trembling as she wraps the dumplings, and with a smile, he realizes that she's far from okay. He finds her nervousness endearing and with a blush admires her cuteness. She becomes so flustered by his comments that she asks him to stop. To ease her discomfort, he suggests they focus on grilling the gyoza. Once the skillet reaches the desired heat, he generously coats it with oil and places the gyoza inside. As the bottoms of the gyoza turn crisp and golden, he adds a splash of water and swiftly covers the pan with a lid to ensure they steam thoroughly. He advises her to exercise caution as oil tends to splatter at this stage. After waiting for about 3 to 4 minutes, when the wrappers become translucent, he increases the heat to high to evaporate any remaining water. Once the gyoza are fully cooked, he carefully transfers them onto a plate. Gazing at the gyoza, she excitedly praises the perfect cooking, eagerly preparing to eat. With a smile, he offers her ponzu soy sauce. As she eats, her face flushes with joy, and she admires the dish, noting how the gyoza is crispy on one side while the rest remains delightfully chewy. They taste crispy and flavorful. He excitedly explains that its lightness comes from skipping garlic and chives, and the superb taste is thanks to grilling it in the skillet. As they enjoy the meal, she smiles and admits, despite encouraging open communication, she still finds it difficult at times. With a smile, he reassures her that he has always been open with her from the start. Without meeting his gaze, she responds that she has finally managed to overcome her nerves. She then candidly remarks that they can't remain in this state of awkwardness forever and emphasizes that they need to grow accustomed to being more intimate with each other. At first, he doesn't fully grasp her words, but as the realization sinks in, he looks at her with a mix of shock and surprise. She meets his gaze with a bashful smile, her cheeks tinged with pink. Gently pushing her hair aside, she offers him the chance to touch her earlobe, explaining that since he had mentioned struggling to understand its shape, this is a way for them to be closer and more intimate today. With a face flushed with embarrassment, he tentatively touches her earlobes, causing her to blush even more. Filled with joy, he adds that from now on, every time he sees dumplings, it will remind him of this special moment with her. The next day, Fukuyama arrives at her home with a heart full of joy, only to be greeted by an unexpected sight. As he knocks on the door, it creaks open to reveal her in an utterly exhausted state. She opens the door with visible fatigue, thanking him for coming despite her evident weariness. He had received a call from her, inviting him over for the weekend and promising a homemade dinner. He had eagerly agreed, but now, seeing her in this depleted condition, he realizes she's even more tired than he is, despite his own travel exhaustion. She forces a smile and apologizes for not picking him up from the station. His reassuring smile does little to ease her stress as she confides in him that she's overwhelmed with work. She's baffled by how the workload became so overwhelming and hasn't yet managed to inform her boss about her transition to freelancing. After sharing this, she retreats back to her room, closing the door behind her, and resumes her work with renewed determination. He watches her with deep concern, his heart aching for her worn and weary state. Seated alone in the lounge, he savors the delightful aroma wafting through the house, a reminder of the comforting atmosphere he's come to cherish. Yet he swiftly remembers his purpose. He's here to prepare dinner for both of them. Rising to action, he knocks gently on her room door, inquiring about her dinner preference. She opens the door just a crack, revealing a weary and disheveled face, and with a fatigued sigh, requests something exceptionally delicious. With a quick thank you, she closes the door again, leaving Fukuyama to ponder the perfect meal to prepare. Noting her exhaustion and the signs of inadequate nourishment, he decides to create something revitalizing. His spirits lift as he recalls that he has packed all the necessary ingredients. Moments later, she emerges from her room, having somehow managed to wrap up her tasks, her hunger evident. Her face brightens with genuine happiness when he informs her that dinner is ready, her tiredness momentarily forgotten in the anticipation of a delightful meal. As she gazes at the home-style yakiniku, her excitement bubbles over, and she eagerly offers to fetch a frying pan. Fukuyama, with a reassuring smile, stops her and explains that they will be using plates instead. He elaborates that they will place these plates on a portable gas stove, adding a touch of ingenuity to the cooking process. He explains that by adding some water to the plates, excess oil will drain into a reservoir below, making the cooking healthier and reducing smoke. With tongs in hand, they begin cooking. As they prepare the beef, Fukuyama instructs her not to grill the side with green onions, but to wrap the onions inside the meat instead. He then suggests she try the beef with a touch of salt. Her eyes well up with tears as she tastes the delectable dish, and she utters broken words of admiration, clearly overwhelmed by the flavor. Noticing her exhaustion, Fukuyama realizes she's so fatigued she struggles to form complete sentences. As she savors the meal, she praises the combination of sauce, salt, and lemon. When Fukuyama tells her that citric acid is a fantastic remedy for exhaustion, she promptly pushes her plate toward him, asking for more lemon. Her demand makes him chuckle, as he recognizes her earnest need for revitalization. The next culinary delight they tackle is skirt steak, promising another round of deliciousness. Noticing the blissful expression on her face, he suggests she try the yakiniku with some spicy sauce. Although she's thrilled with the exquisite flavors, she lacks the energy to finish her sentences. She manages to mention that the yakiniku sauce is making her crave a bit of rice. Her eyes light up with joy when he excitedly reveals that he's prepared some for her. Her delight at this revelation is palpable, making the meal even more special. Afterward, they finally try the galbi, which she finds absolutely delectable, whether paired with salt sauce or yakiniku sauce. She enjoys it so much that she eagerly asks for more rice. Once they finish eating, she warmly thanks him for coming over and preparing such a wonderful dinner. Her gratitude is evident as she expresses how much she appreciates his thoughtful visit and delicious cooking. He is taken aback when she reveals that she usually relies on convenience store food due to her hectic schedule, and she joyfully praises his homemade meal. Embarrassed, he corrects her, saying it isn't truly homemade but rather grilled. She responds with a smile, explaining her restlessness from not having barbecue on the weekends, a habit she's grown accustomed to because of him. Gazing at her with a blushed face, he marvels at her cuteness even when she's exhausted and disheveled, cherishing how her smile warms his heart. As she eats with chopsticks, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, she nervously asks him to stop talking like that. With a grin, he encourages her to use her tongue for the meat, and then, seeing the grilled meat, he serves her a portion. As they enjoy the meal, they both feel a surge of happiness, reminiscing about their first meeting when he had suggested she use her tongs for the meat, evoking fond memories. After finishing their meal, she tells him he's free to take a bath. Holding a towel in his hands, he playfully swings it around and suggests she join in. Her eyes widen in shock as she misunderstands his intent, thinking he's referring to bathing. However, upon realizing he's simply talking about the towel that carries the room's delightful aroma, she happily begins to twirl the damp towel through the air, mimicking his playful gesture. As he emerges from the bath, he thanks her warmly for letting him use her bathroom. Upon entering the living room, he notices that the tantalizing aroma of yakiniku still lingers. She, seated with a worried expression on the couch, mentions that she only has one mattress available. Immediately, she suggests he sleep on the couch. With a gentle smile, he offers her the bed, acknowledging her exhaustion. Concerned that the lingering smell might disturb him if he sleeps in the living room, he cheerfully proposes sleeping on the floor instead. When she looks puzzled and anxious, he bashfully explains that this way he could watch her sleeping face. This causes her to blush deeply, and she nervously requests that he not do so. After their heartfelt discussion, he finds himself reclining on the couch, his mind swirling with thoughts about her. He muses that her mention of having only one mattress, coupled with her blushing, might have been a subtle hint about the possibility of sharing her bed. With this realization, he quietly gets up, his curiosity piqued. Slipping into his shoes with the utmost stealth, he gently opens her bedroom door and whispers her name. To his gentle surprise, she is fast asleep, cocooned in her blanket, completely worn out. The next morning, he takes it upon himself to prepare a delicious dinner for her, recognizing that she still has work to complete before he heads back to his own home. The following week, as he meticulously prepares a meal for both of them, he begins by trimming the ends off the zucchini and slicing it into quarters lengthwise. He skillfully removes the woody ends from the asparagus, peels a third of it from root to tip, and then slices the myoga in half lengthwise. He seasons some tender pork belly with a touch of salt and pepper, then wraps it around the asparagus, creating an irresistible combination. As he informs her about the process of wrapping the ingredients, he suddenly recalls the previous week when she had been ensconced in her blanket. With a mix of curiosity and embarrassment, he inquires whether her complete wrapping of herself might have been an indirect hint that she wanted to share her bed. Noting her shocked reaction to his question, he quickly clarifies, with a hint of awkwardness, that he had not intruded on her room in any unusual manner. They swiftly set aside their previous conversation, their excitement palpable as they realize the meal is nearing completion and looking utterly tantalizing. As they use their chopsticks to sample the wraps, both are delighted by the burst of juiciness and rich, meaty flavors. She lights up with enthusiasm when he reveals the array of spices he has, including salt, pepper, ponzu, and soy sauce. With these seasonings applied, they eagerly dig in. She marvels at the crispy meat and the tender, succulent vegetables. He elaborates with a grin, explaining that the vegetables gain an extraordinary depth of flavor as the savory fat from the meat infuses them, particularly when the vegetables are in season. Pleased with the results, he decides to grill a few more to savor the delectable experience. After finishing their meal and entering his bedroom, he carefully places a small distance between the beds, his mind racing as he contemplates closing the gap. Suddenly, she bursts through the door and approaches him, sending a jolt of nervousness through him. Stunned by her presence, he awkwardly clutches his head, trying to alleviate the tension by suggesting he'll sleep in the living room. His surprise escalates when she, with a flushed face, grabs his shirt and invites him to stay in the room. As he lies on the bed, he feels a wave of embarrassment over his previous awkward behavior, realizing he should have been more composed. He nervously listens to her shifting on the bed, feeling mortified compared to the ease he had while grilling with her. Meanwhile, he anxiously wonders whether she is drifting off to sleep or still awake. When she gently asks him to look at her, he, his cheeks flushed with a deep crimson, meets her gaze but finds himself speechless. With a shy blush coloring her face, she extends her hand in a tender gesture of intimacy. They grasp each other's hands, seeking solace in their shared connection. As they discuss their journey and the moments they missed, their conversation gradually leads them into slumber. The next morning, he awakens to find her once again cocooned in the blanket, sleeping serenely.
Here I am.